So, as if to possibly scrub every last remnant of Rodolfo Borrell out of Austin FC, there are rumors that two U22 players that came in under Borrell may be going out now, namely Nico Dubrsarski and Mateja Djordjevic, which, again, in addition to two U22s being gone from the team, leaving just Owen Wolf, should these things actually happen, two of the better nicknames of the team would be gone at this point. So, of course, Dubrsarski Dubes, that's a pretty easy one to get to. But Djordjevic, one of my favorite nicknames of the team, pretty underrated, but there's lore behind it. Moisés, do you want to take over?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. People might even fight you. Everybody called him Duber, not Dubes. But I think you dubbed him Dubes early on, and it stuck. It stuck in the Phil West section of things. I'm not going to say it's as big of a conflict as Verdos versus FSito.
I've heard Dubes other places.
I've heard Dubes other places.
Not just from my mouth.
Teasing, of course. No, Djordjevic, here's the thing about Mateja. He has a nickname that I think the lore will continue to be debated as to exactly how this originated, but people call him Hot Dog. And it's not because of anything he did or anything he said. It's because, as I understand this, and I fully welcome them to correct me on this, and they will, I'm sure, the Cragnola's mishearing what Brad Stuver called him in a warm-up.
This was at Coachella, I believe.
They thought they heard him at Coachella, either in a warm-up or in one of those games. They thought they heard Brad Stuver call Djordjevic Hot Dog. Stuver has no memory of this, apparently. Stuver has no memory of calling him anything other than Mateja or Djordjevic. And I don't know what was in the air, what kind of haze was hanging in the air at Coachella. I don't know what was in the water at Coachella, but facts are less important than the vibes and what they thought they heard, which is Hot Dog. And so he's been Hot Dog ever since. He's been Hot Dog for months.
I believe it was Mata.
Mata, okay.
Which then turned into Hot Dog, which, again, not having anything to do with his defensive prowess.
Right.
We'll leave that untouched for now.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best completely unintentional nicknames that anybody could have hoped for. Because what do you think every time you're leaving Costco? I got $1.50 in my pocket. You know what that means? Hot Dog.
Emergency podcast. Better did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, oh yeah, shut up, oh yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies, the Costco food emergencies. You gravitate towards the hot dog, apparently. I have, in the past, been partial to the chicken bake, except, oh my God, look at all those calories. And Costco is a drudge.
Look, if you're counting calories at Costco, I don't know that you're doing Costco precisely right. I can't begrudge the chicken bake, but I'm sorry, but the $1.50 hot dog is always going to be the go-to.
All right. Well, we got a lot to get to here. We have several things that we got to get to from Tuesday's recording. We had, of course, a massive show on Tuesday in which we initially made fun of Houston Dynamo's new back of the jersey sponsor. And we are going to circle back around, of course, to the Dynamo, who will be playing Austin tonight as we are recording here on Saturday morning. But first, let's hit these transfer rumors. So Dubrsarski, apparently, according to, I believe, an Argentine journalist, there is a team in Argentina named Tigre, not to be confused with Monterrey's Tigres, and apparently Dubrsarski is on his way there. Is there anything that you want to fill in terms of that rumor?
The understanding that we have based on what's been reported so far is that it would be a loan without fee, but despite there not being a fee, that would take the international slot off of Austin's books. The loaned to team would presumably also be taking care of the salary, and there would be a sell-on built into it, provided it worked out. And could be that this is just what the player is looking for, and this sends things in that direction, presumably on a number that everybody's happy with. And no notes on him as, oh, good riddance or anything like that. Seemed like a real nice guy, developing talent worth developing further. And whatever this is, whether it's player preference, whether it's changing plans long-term in terms of the midfield build, that's probably more likely. And away goes one of the two remaining Mate Gourds on the team.
He does have a little bit more playing time than you might have expected or remembered. 661 minutes, 11 appearances, 7 starts. Of course, no goal contributions in there. Last year, 22 games where he appeared, 7 starts, 688 minutes. So if he does get some time today, he may surpass what he did all of last year. Had a single assist last year. But again, playing the 6, you're not necessarily going to look for goal contribution numbers from him, but still, yeah, again, young, developing player, but maybe not developing as quickly as Verdi needs him to. At one time, I think we thought he was going to be the heir apparent to Ilie as the starting 6. Again, in Curtin's system, I think you probably need a true destroyer number 6. I don't know what you're going to be able to find necessarily on the market, but I imagine if this is just trying to move on from all of Burrell's acquisitions, or at least most of them, or at least the movable ones, then maybe you are looking to beef that up in the winter window somehow. Again, I don't know what kind of moves are going to happen in the summer necessarily, but interesting that we are potentially moving players out and maybe don't have necessarily the mechanisms to move players back in. It's kind of curious there.
On the topic of rumors, there was the stub of a rumor of the Austin may be interested in this defensive midfielder from Palmeiras. So maybe that is actually indeed in the works, and this is part of that. So I guess we will see if there's more smoke, then maybe there is Verde smoke on the other side of that one. On Djordjevic, on Hot Dog.
The hot dog rumor, yeah.
The hot dog rumor. What do we think there? We've not been the highest on him in talking about, oh, well, he's starting. That's not a great sign. That sort of thing has been kind of the reflex among the fan base, I think, in a few conversations we've had on the show.
He did appear on Wednesday's win to close things out. We kind of expected this to happen because we knew Heinz Eich wasn't going to be able to go a full 90. Bell was injured with the pubis injury. And again, just kind of otherwise at that point, kind of thin in defense. You got to use Djordjevic at that point, right? So, but this is from Verde Nation. And I want to read the exact wording because I have kind of my suspicions about what this might be. So per sources, Austin FC are reportedly looking to move on from U22 defender Matej Djordjevic and are open to offers for the center back. It's been signed a year ago today as of when this post happened, but made just 7 appearances in MLS. This to me almost sounds like Verde Nation just going to somebody within the Austin FC sporting department saying, hey, if you could get something for Djordjevic, would you move him? And that person say, yeah, I think we'd be open to that. So it seems like, he's not contributing as you would expect a U22 to contribute. Again, if we are trying to get truly post Burrell, I could see they're not necessarily wanting an appetite, a real hunger for him to stay with the club. I don't know if this means that there's anything concrete. It sounds kind of nebulous to me. So my guess is maybe this is an agent thing. Maybe this is just we'd move him because we're probably not going to keep him long term. And why not do that now while there's a window open?
Yeah, there's not much to it other than that. But often when Verde Nation is posting stuff, they're citing other people having sources indicating this or that, and it's kind of aggregation. And this being a per sources, it would be weird for them to not actually have something direct and reliable, just because most of their stuff is that kind of reposting stuff. Take it for what one thinks that is worth. We've got a number of things to roll through here. Phil, we're gonna finally wrap up the World Cup. We've got the second half of our Ilie interview that we'll hit on the other side of that. We talk a bit about the future. He talks a bit about his experience watching the World Cup. And then we'll wrap things up with the Seattle recap and the Houston preview. Sound good?
Yeah. So why don't we get into the Ilie, and why don't you set this up a little bit? Just where did we leave off Tuesday, and what are we in store for as we get into the second half?
Yeah. So the first half of the interview was very much focused on kind of the reset of the second half of the season, and kind of talking about what people haven't seen behind the scenes that he had, that the rest of the team has in training and closed door friendlies and the overall group dynamic of stuff. And then we segued into how he sees his post-playing career. Not that that's necessarily immediately in the cards, but how does he see that taking shape? And anytime I ask a version of this of a player, there is that kind of reflexive, "You trying to retire me, man?" But this is much more. We've seen this kind of role that he's taken on, mentoring, coaching from the sidelines, being heavily involved in every part of the club. And so got one of the more interesting answers accidentally toward the end of his answer here. And then asked him about his thoughts on the Jim Curtin hire, because he was on the opposite side of that in what I consider the best MLS Cup final in league history.
Yep.
And then a bit about the World Cup and what he found stood out about that, which will actually, I think, segue nicely into us wrapping up our final thoughts on the 2026 World Cup. So I guess without further ado, here we go with part 2 of me talking to Captain Ilie.
Transition.
And there's been some lingering curiosity that I've had. We've never really talked about this, but does your role as the captain of the team, has that, not just at Austin, but prior to Austin, has that guided your considerations to your post-playing career in potentially coaching? Is that something that's somewhere in the back of your mind as you serve this role in terms of looking at how you progress your own development as a football professional?
I would say I'm still learning what I want to do the next few years, like in my short-term future. Also, I'm working with the schedule of the league and the game schedule and some options that I may have for next year or in 2 years. I would say I'm very focused on this next 6 months. I'm all in with the same way that I've been for the past year and a half or since I joined MLS, but also is that things are getting put together in the way that I just feel that everything, it's natural, right? So the next step feels natural, and trying to also behave with common sense with how I find myself every day, day after day. So I'm not sure. I don't know. Who knows what the future holds for me? But there are many other things that I need to take into consideration when making a big decision for my career. If I only think in a professional way, I can already tell you what my next steps will be or will look like. If I stop and pull myself outside of what I have to deal with every day, and I think more deeply about life and what I want to do and my family, and also youth thoughts or ideas that I had for myself in the future, I don't know what that future looks like. But if you ask me only professionally, what will make most sense? I finish this season in Austin FC. I give my best, give it all to turn this season back or up. I play for 6 more months in MLS. And then when the schedule changes, I look for a different league, different team to play for and retire for 1 or 2 more years. And those 1 or 2 more years will need to set me for what's next, that in my mind there is only one realistic and clear option, that's becoming a soccer coach. Is that enough of an
Yeah,
answer?
that's more than enough. It's a galaxy of options.
And if I think more deeply about what's next for my life, what's next for my family, what this world means to me, I might quit and I go to the mountains and I retire there. I spend my days naked, walking around and surrounded by nature. And I smash my phone against the ground, and you know nothing else about myself ever again.
The wandering monk in the mountains.
Let's go. And wait for capitalism to end and explode the earth.
So the club announced the hiring of Jim Curtin, and this is a coach who you've played against in what I and many others consider the greatest MLS Cup final in the history of the league. And aside from what I'm sure your employers would love to hear you say about their new coaching hire, what's your personal perspective on Jim Curtin as a man, as a tactician, as someone who is known and respected around MLS?
I suffer him in my bones. He built the best team in that season alongside with LAFC. I think not just the final, but the whole season. The fight for the supporter shield was epic. We finished with 67 points, both teams. We just got the supporter shield because I think we had one or two more wins. But that means that they tied more games than us, so we lost more games. And that just tells you how difficult it was to play against that Philadelphia Union team. If you read or about it, or you talked with the people that was there with him, you could understand that he was a big part of that success, and that we just talked about guidelines and following the lead of the coach or the coaches or the people that's higher up in the structure. I think that he was the main guy for them, and obviously they follow and execute to perfection to what we saw. With that being said, I don't know much more or much else about him or the way that he does things, because you only know the people that you work with every day for a year or two or like some time, and I wasn't there. What I could tell you is that every time, especially closer to the final, every time that I saw one of his interviews, and especially the ones that where he talked about our LAFC team, the first feeling that comes to me is the respect. So much respect for the way that he spoke, the way that he handled himself, and also his players. And that's something that Austin FC, first of all, that tells me why the ownership group thought about him and ultimately hired him for this position, but also what Austin FC people should be expecting in for next seasons here for them. I remember after the final, even the one that I liked the most before the final was him and Alejandro Bedoya, prior to the biggest game. Obviously, we had so many big names that season in the second part of the season, summer transfer window to LAFC, and all the questions were about these big names ahead of the final. And both of them were answering, giving credit to the rest of the group that was there since day one, that started the season, that set the right track for the team, and then obviously the big names helped to close it down. But that just tells you that they are both, and Jim, specifically Jim, they are soccer people. They know what this business is about. They are the real professionals. He's a real professional, and that if you have that foundation, things can only go good for you. Obviously, it will take time. You will be challenged, but that tells me, and it should tell everyone else, that they know what they're doing and they know what they want and how to get there with their work day after day.
And just one more about the World Cup. Spain won. Other than that, what were other highlights for you paying attention to the tournament? What did you pay attention to? What stood out to you? What do you in a tournament that has a lot of positives and a lot of negatives every time it happens? What were some of the good takeaways to you about this year's tournament?
I would only like to talk about soccer. There are many other things we could
Sure.
talk about, and I've only watched Spain and the US games. Spain because it was the best team of the tournament, and I knew that, not because of the performances in this tournament, but because of what they've been doing for so long. So it was all about confirming who they are, and they did. And it was very fun to watch. I really enjoyed watching their games. And then obviously the US national team that also started really well and that I've been following for 2 years now since Pochettino is in charge, because I really saw different things that as a player I didn't think mattered that much, but that I could see it after Pochettino built them within his team that have had a big impact on not just the performances, but also the results. I think they did a great job in this World Cup. And I also would like to say that it is not fair the way that some people handled things prior to the game that they got knocked out. I think that they should, if so, they should have get helped instead of punished by people that was or that we expected to be on their side. It's not possible that the president comes out and makes a joke about a situation that I don't think he knew, but that definitely was not going to help the team or the narrative of what they were achieving in this World Cup.
All right. Sounded good. Have you ever been naked in the mountains?
No, I've rarely been in the mountains. You know, maybe I'm just not living life right. I should smash my phone immediately and find a better path.
I've been naked in a pool in Middletown, Connecticut in a Holiday Inn, but that's a story for a different time.
That's the cold open to a memoir, Phil. I don't know if we have time for that today.
All right. Well, should we hit our World Cup thing then? We had some Siskel and Ebertian fire on Tuesday that we were not able to insert into the show just because that show ran so long and we didn't want to necessarily keep you in an emergency podcast for 2 hours, although we are possibly risking that today. So, but we gotta let loose with this before it becomes, dated, right? So again, World Cup still fresh in our memories. But we had some awards that we gave, which I think puts a bow nicely on what we saw and kind of what we enjoyed and what we're gonna take away from those as we look forward to future competitions.
Transition.
Okay, let's put a button on the World Cup, Phil.
Okay, so we decided that we wanted to do a kind of last round of acknowledgement of the World Cup.
Phil, now that the Eppies have taken place, the true greatest award show in sport can finally take the stage now that we're in the heat of award season. So what have we dubbed these end of the World Cup awards?
We have dubbed them the Eppies, or Emergency Podcast, EP, right? So I have come up with 6 categories that I think wrap up the conversations that you and I have been having back channel and 4 channel here to a certain degree about the World Cup, some of the things that we've shared over the last few weeks, and then just kind of things that we have texted to each other in the throes of watching way too many matches. We're actually at a wake earlier today and my wife was saying that I had watched 90% of World Cup games, and I did not think it was quite that high, but at times it kind of felt like it was that much. So it was a lot of soccer that got consumed here over the past month. So,
well,
good
Phil,
soccer mostly, right?
I was not encased in a glass cage of emotion, but I did watch 104 matches. I watched every single one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Not
okay,
with
wow,
full
okay.
attention. I was doing dishes. I was cooking. I was doing
Your
other
cats were with
stuff.
you.
Yeah, cats were hanging out. But I watched every single match. Do I remember everyone clearly? No, I'm middle-aged, Phil. That's not something I can do anymore. But certain things did stand out. And what I love about these 6 categories you put together is that they take my addled with middle-age brain into account. And thankfully, I do have vivid enough memories of this 104 game odyssey that felt like it took 20 years, but instead was just 39 days that we have now returned from, mostly intact.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to start this with best underdog. And we have 4 here. I think I know where we're going to land on this. We have not consulted with each other.
Nope.
You know the categories, you've seen the candidates, but we have not at all prepared or talked about who we're going to vote for. So we may have some disputes here in the next few minutes that may be lively, or we might be in lockstep, as I suspect we will be for a lot of these. So first of all, best underdog. And I guess maybe let's do this in alphabetical order. So we have Cabo Verde, first of all. Of course, they started out drawing Spain, which turned out to be one of the tougher matches results wise, and I think on the field wise, eye test wise, that Spain had, the eventual champion Spain. And then of course took Argentina to that incredible knockout round match. Argentina of course was able to triumph in the end, but Cabo Verde gave it everything they had. Very, very impressive. We had Curacao, who initially got close to blanked by Germany, but they did get a goal in there, 7-1. It was, I think, 1-1 at one point. I think that was an equalizer that was in there.
They deserve more credit for hanging on the way that they did. Like, looking at the final scoreline, one of the things that made them stand out to me is the fight that they showed despite eventually getting steamrolled in that match. I think that's what gets forgotten about that.
Yeah. Now, they looked like they were going toe-to-toe with Germany for a while. And then, of course, they drew Ecuador, one of the dark horses of the tournament. And then we have DR Congo, made it out of the groups, good showing against Portugal. And then, of course, they gave England kind of all they could handle before Harry Kane took that match over. Then we had Egypt, who got themselves out of the group, kind of a tough group, Belgium in that group, and kind of some weird group stage matches. But then they were up 2-0 on Argentina in the 75th minute. Looked like they were going to pull that out, but then combination of refs doing what they did and Argentina being zombies, refusing to die, led to Argentina winning that match. But Egypt looked real good in that. And wow, I was believing there for a little bit. So do you have one that jumps out to you on this list?
Well, I mean, they all jump out in different ways. And for me, the delight of the tournament comes from the surprises given by teams like all 4 of these in the list. But for me, it's Cabo Verde in a walk. It is one thing to be as resilient as they were. It's another thing to have an incredible performance by a 40-year-old goalkeeper. It's yet another thing to have what I consider the goal of the tournament by Sidney Lopez Cabral against Argentina, really showing up
to draw
big.
level in extra time.
Yeah, like they are the story of the tournament in every way, and it's not just it's not just the Jimothy of it, of, oh, look at this raccoon. It's not, oh, weren't they cute? They truly showed up on the world stage, and people not only know that they exist, but where they are. And they learned things about this country that many people across the world did not know existed before the tournament began. And what many people joked was, oh, why would people care about driving to Houston to watch Cabo Verde versus Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? And a lot of people regret not buying that ticket. A lot of people regret not buying the most accessible ticket for seeing the biggest surprise story of the tournament. And that, to me, is why, all of the corruption aside, I'm incredibly looking forward to a 64-team tournament, because who knows what other stories like this we get? Who knows?
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully teams 49 through 64 can do what teams 33 through 48 did this time around. But yeah, definitely encouraged. And yeah, to me, that goal you mentioned was the goal of the tournament. But I think my favorite goal of the tournament was the one that drew Cabo Verde level with Uruguay, the Helio Varela goal in the 61st minute. That's the one where Uruguay was just kind of lackadaisical, and then Cabo Verde jumped on it and countered and scored an incredibly opportunistic goal to again, equalize and shock a Uruguay team that was on its way out, basically.
Deserving of being on the way
deservedly out. So, yeah. So we didn't have Uruguay in another category where we could have had them in, perhaps. But yeah, that's, Cabo Verde then definitely our best underdog. We're in agreement. That's awesome. Okay. Do you want to take the next one?
All right. So next up, best fans. And there's so many different criteria to judge this on, right? I'm just going to list them off and we'll dive in whatever order we want to. The 4 nominees we've got are Colombia, Norway, Scotland, and Mexico. And boy, are they all deserving in various different ways. I think starting off talking about Scotland drinking Boston out of beer, did you know it was possible? And bringing the joy of anybody but England soccer to everywhere they went. It was just delightful. It was just delightful. A great way to come back into the tournament after a very, very long time out, where you had various Scottish celebrities, Karen Gillan among them, proudly wearing the colors and repping the badge. Wherever Scotland went, there they went.
JJ Bull with the very unofficial Scotland theme song, which if you have not heard that yet, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Of course, Austin's own Alistair McAllister doing
the true
doing
journalist among us.
On TikTok.
Let's just say it, the true journalist.
The objective
among
journalist.
Us. The objective journalist among us.
Right. So that's Scotland. Colombia, of course, just bring in energy match after match, filling stadiums with yellow jerseys.
For me, the big thing about them is they were so vibrant and so energetic. They repped South America with the passion and verve that, I mean, some people think that only Brazil can do it to that extent. But Colombia showed that they could go toe-to-toe with the true gigantic force that is Brazil when it comes to energy. And the Shakira effect can't be denied. I mean, Shakira has been at more World Cups than many people that people would call men's World Cup legends. And Shakira saved the World Cup musically from Jello.
Oh God, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you notice that lighter song was absolutely nowhere during
it's
this
gone.
World Cup. You did not hear it at all.
And
the Shakira song lives on in the pantheon of Shakira World Cup songs.
It's in a
just
bizarre,
sounds like the World Cup.
A bizarre hat on a hat on a hat on a Bieber acoustic performance that didn't fit with any of the rest of it. Shakira brought it back to the center and brought it back to the vibe and energy that you want out of a World Cup with a halftime show that, if you ask me, would have been a much better opening performance to a final rather than taking a half hour in the middle of a game. I think literally as it was, I think everybody would have received it so much better if, rather than an opening ceremony, considered a closing ceremony leading into the game so that the game could flow the way that it was meant to. But honestly, Shakira and the Muppets are so good that they just they make everything better that they touch.
Yeah. And speaking of the Muppets were rowing at one point, as the Norway fans were. So gotta mention them, of course. I think probably one of the most, again, just if you think about visuals in this World Cup and you think about panning to the crowd and seeing Norwegian fans doing the rowing, except for the one who refused to row because he thought historically they sailed. But as we've mentioned here, you're probably not 100% correct on that, sir.
The power.
Just go ahead and row with your fellow fans. Like, who cares? Yeah. Like, the wave is stupid. Sometimes you get caught up in the wave. You shouldn't probably, but just row with your people.
Just Norway, the interminable commercials that we saw, there was the one that was all about get up and move and that kind of thing. The Norway fans took that very seriously, and they showed everybody that, yes, you can, in fact, watch soccer and exercise the entire time. And I should have been using a treadmill or a bike during more of these 104 games. But, you know.
Or a rowing machine.
You know, or a rowing machine. There you go. Frankly, Amazon should be sold out of rowing machines at this point. What were you going to say about Mexico, Phil? What among many things could be said about Mexico?
Just a lot of energy. I mean, obviously, those matches, as it all turned out, were in Mexico, in the Azteca, and in Guadalajara as well. So certainly you would expect that. I mean, again, not a big fan of the P chant, not a big fan that came out, but they definitely showed for their home side. The Ochoa send-off was brilliant, and they added a lot of color and energy to those games. And for a while, looked like a pretty formidable team. I had actually picked them to go to the semis. That did not work out, but thanks to England. But they were looking real good after the group stages.
It felt like they could have gone there. And the unfortunate thing to bring up, which is the P chant, there are people who would disqualify them from this list of nominees based on that existing. Now, here's the thing about it, is it is almost as difficult to completely eliminate as the wave, as various other things, because how precisely do you control it? And this isn't defending it at all, to be clear.
Right. Sure.
The reason I feel like they deserve a spot on this list with a bullet is everything that Mexico fans did to counteract that negativity within their fan base. The acceptance, the insert name of country here, hermano, yeah, it is Mexicano. Adopting other fan bases once they were out, whether based on their existing grudges or just the Korean fans that were there in the group stage. There was such a for me when it came to the three host nations. No offense to the U.S. and Canada, but Mexico showed up the biggest to me. They were the first opening ceremony. They were the first game. There was a sentimental football culture vibe with them that permeated the entire time they were in the tournament, on beyond when they were out of the tournament, and even after games were no longer being played in Mexico. There were Mexico fans everywhere. In one clip that has been making the rounds in recent days for obvious reasons, where a Mexico fan is getting relentlessly taunted with absolutely vile language by Argentina fans. And that guy standing up for football and the purity and joy of the tournament and the sport, that's why Mexico is my number one, is overcoming some of what I think people have taken to the level of being stereotypes about painting with a broad brush of all Mexico fans are like blank. Mexico fans forcefully pushed back on that this time. And the bad elements of things are always going to be there. But I did not see that from Argentina fans pushing back on the absurdly racist stuff going on there. Paraguay fans and politicians even standing up for racism rather than against it. That to me, I feel like if you were really paying attention to Mexico, there was some important work being done that they deserve a lot of credit for in 2026.
Okay. I was going to lean Norway on this, but you've talked me into Mexico.
They're Mexico's brothers, so Norway wins because Mexico wins. That's the beauty of it, Phil.
Okay. All right. Most satisfying team to see eliminated. We have Argentina. Took to the finals to do that. We had Paraguay, who made me angry on July 4th. Angrier than I should have been in preparation for lighting off some fireworks, playing France, and a lot of really cynical anti-football from them. Qatar, who was not only a pretty terrible team that probably should not have been in the tournament, but a player felt bad about it, but actually did break a Canadian player's leg in the middle of a 6-0 match where they were already down 3-0 and down to 10 men at that point. And then Switzerland, who just nobody really liked watching except for Mamzani, who got injured halfway through the tournament. So eventually Switzerland reverted to nobody really enjoyed watching them. Although they did give Argentina an entertaining match in the quarterfinals.
To start with Switzerland, how much does it suck to be everybody's supporting you because, if you don't win, it means Argentina does. Not because anybody's especially passionate about bandwagoning you, but just because this at least gets Argentina out of the way.
Serves you for being neutral.
Qatar, I'll mention Argentina again. I don't know why this is becoming a theme. So I'll put it this way. In no way in the world will I defend the breaking of an opposing player's leg. Unlike what I feel like most of the players on Argentina would feel, at least there was remorse, immediate and deep remorse, and visited the guy in the hospital. That much I can at least appreciate. And
careless AF, but like at least he made an effort.
There was the right kind of,
after he devastatingly altered Canada's tournament.
Exactly.
Taking out one of their best players when they were already injury depleted. I digress.
I can say that, and I've got plenty of feelings about whether Qatar deserved to be in the tournament in the first place and the sports washing that happens at a national level there. My heart goes out to what I feel is safe to assume some of those players who, look, this is just how they are able to make a living, and they have certain expectations on them from a pretty overbearing regime. So at the very least, I can feel for these guys on a human level, because unlike other players I could name as we move to Paraguay, there is not this like visible intent to just hurt people and be disgustingly, abhorrently racist. Paraguay.
So we are now down to 2 South American thug teams.
Yeah, Paraguay, I can't assign the abhorrent racism of one of their politicians to all of their players being those players' fault, but I don't know how you defend showing up on the world stage that way when there could be something beautiful about it. Instead, it is just outright, we will play with brutality and be proud of it.
We will flop. We will
swear word.
house. We will do whatever it takes to irritate this team we are playing against, and we will not actually really make many attempts at scoring goals or connecting passes or anything like that. So to me, the big difference between Argentina and Paraguay, they both went out similar ways. Obviously, Argentina does it in the final. Paraguay does it much earlier, but they go out to classy teams that are actually trying to play soccer really well. Argentina has Messi, right? So they're a little bit removed. Like, the entire team is not engaging in that. And to be fair, Argentina did play some pretty football along the way, but it's just that Spain didn't let them, because Spain doesn't really let anybody do that. But that Paraguay did what they did with that ref giving them 0 yellow cards in that match made it extremely satisfying to see them go out.
Just incredibly so.
And Mbappe just kind of showing them up after the match was delicious as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Mbappe masterclass in sportsmanship and direct clapping back. And it was so satisfying that, were it not a generationally defining, a would-be GOAT legacy defining elimination, I would kind of tend toward them over Argentina. Here's why it's got to be Argentina for me. So I'm gonna mention a long rivalry, and I've had issues with this in a way different than I think most of the people that participated in this dialogue of who is the greatest of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo Siete of Portugal or Leo Messi. My contention for the longest time was neither one of them. Neither one of them. And when you have Diego Maradona on a hot mic in a clip that has delightfully been making the rounds again, talking about how, he met this Messi kid and he's talented, but he doesn't really have a personality. It's something that locks in better with all these clips that people have seen, where it's, there are these clips of Messi crying, and I'm glad to see Messi crying. I have a different perspective of it because of the reverse camera angles that we've seen since the day of the match, where you can see him very clearly within his line of sight, watching his teammates throat punch, gut punch, go after members of the other team that has just beaten them in a final. Is he doing anything to stop any of that? Nope. He is posing for the camera. He is emoting for the camera. It is all about him. Allegedly, there was a fight in the locker room about some sort of tactical plan that is what resulted in Lautaro Martinez being benched. And that is part of the reason why he went straight back to Italy and not back to Argentina.
Yeah. Big mistake to not play him, by the way.
Huge mistake. Huge mistake in a game where they needed offensive talent. But in a game that the rumors and speculation that are out there, which I don't disbelieve, knowing what we know, was that, Mbappe scored those goals in that third place game. Leo needs a hat trick so that he gets the golden boot. Is that more important, or is emphasizing team play? Everything we've heard out of Inter Miami, as we've seen from various manager dismissals, is that if you are not on the right side of Leo and his dad, you're gone. You're gone. Doesn't matter how good you are. This team is built around him. And to me, to see them, for people who were casual to semi-casual, going, Argentina, they won the last time, and Leo's the best in the world, and all this other stuff. To see him go from the neutrals, isn't he the best in the world, to this man is history's greatest villain and he must be ended now. From people who came into this tournament kind of casual and kind of football curious, To me, the reason that they were so satisfyingly eliminated in a final, I think that's the tenuous part of it. Like, that's the tenuous part of, do we consider them eliminated? They lost a final. They technically didn't get eliminated. But for me, if you want to talk about the greatest player of all time of these generations, Marta is a far superior player in various respects to Lionel Messi, irrespective of gender. If you want to talk about across history, I would rank Thierry Henry, Diego Maradona, Pele all above him. Not just because of their play on the field, but because of who they were as ambassadors for the game. And that final, the reason it was so satisfying to see them lose it is because indeed the emperor had no clothes. In so many ways. That's me.
I like it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so we'll say Argentina, but because on the grand global scale, although I'm gonna still contend that I took a little bit more personal satisfaction in seeing Paraguay ousted.
I think we've got to have two winners, Phil. I think we've got to say Argentina and Paraguay because of the technicality of Argentina lost a final, so technically they weren't eliminated. And it's kind of, how do you stack something up against Argentina with all of that stuff baked into it? Yeah, I think it's totally fair to say that we have a tie on technicality grounds, but we're making the rules, so that's all that matters.
Okay. Let's do these last three pretty quick here. I got to run to PetSmart and get some crickets to feed a bearded dragon before 9 o'clock here as we were recording. So best individual achievement, Mbappe scoring 10 goals, Unai Simon only letting in 1 goal, Erling Haaland becoming lovable, or Vozinha getting millions of Instagram followers after shutting down Spain.
I'm kind of two minds here where it's like, no. And see, well, okay, so the reason I'm scratching off Erling Haaland becoming lovable is he was already lovable to me. He's a weirdo Norse homunculus, the Hulk, but he's cute.
But on a grander scale.
It takes home taxidermy. Yeah, that was cool. Okay, I'm going to put Mbappe scoring 10 goals and Unai Simon only letting in 1 goal on even footing. Vozinha is the story of the tournament. That's it for me.
Okay. Yeah, so Cabo Verde sweeping the awards. I like that. Unai Simon had obviously the luxury of having the 10 guys in front of him shutting down teams, but still to only let in 1 goal is pretty incredible. 10 goals in a World Cup, that's fantastic. But of course, some of those goals were gained in a ridiculous 6-4 semifinal, so maybe that colors it a little bit. Yeah, we can give this to Vozinha. I like that. The best Austin tie-in, we had Jayden Nelson getting on the field for Canada, first Austin FC player to play in a World Cup. We had Ismail Elfath repping his semifinal. Sebastian Berhalter scoring goal for the U.S., of course, connected to Austin FC briefly, and then Gio Reyna by virtue of his dad, as you know, from why he's no longer sporting director at Austin FC. But Gio Reyna scoring a Travella goal for the U.S. To me, Ismail Elfath is one of, if not the best ref that was at the World Cup.
Yeah.
And just his longevity and just his consistency and being able to see him on that tier of the stage to me was phenomenal. Jayden Nelson getting in for Canada was great, but he was a last minute injury replacement for Marcelo Flores and had some pretty limited minutes in a game where essentially they were ousted at that point. So I think Elfath gets those.
Berhalter and Reyna, I think good, but I feel like they'll have bigger stories to tell down the line. My issue with Elfath in the semifinal is that, boy, were there a lot of blown calls that weren't necessarily his fault, but are being blamed on him. So even though you and I know, I think, better than a lot of the people who are like, oh, he's Messi's favorite ref, he threw it for Messi, oh, he didn't see this. Well, no, he literally didn't see it. And also he had incompetent VAR. The reason I lean Jayden Nelson on this is wasn't originally rostered. Had he come on earlier in that game as God and the universe thought he should have, maybe Canada wouldn't have been out. If he had
was I screaming that in a bar in New Orleans? Perhaps.
Maybe you were. I feel like our overriding theme, Phil, is spite. And I feel like the spite that I feel for Jesse Marsch not giving Jayden Nelson more minutes in that match specifically, in Houston, in a climate that he's familiar with, that was doing brutal work on his teammates, that was one of the biggest coaching tactical misses that I would like to believe, in the same way that Jesse Marsch did end up giving him minutes, did end up putting him on the roster, that I would love to see Jesse Marsch learn from. I think Jesse Marsch should continue as Canada's coach if he is willing to show growth as a coach and learning from those mistakes. That to me...
But with injuries, he got dealt with.
What do you do? Yeah.
Because I was also screaming for Alphonso Davies to be in this game, and he was apparently too broken for that to happen. So
Yeah.
there you have it.
Our
Okay, final category.
Last one.
Yes. Yeah, best, now that we look at it more, we really like this jersey. We talked about jerseys we liked a few weeks ago, but there were others that jumped out to us. So we had Belgium away, so the Rene Magritte inspired blue and pink jersey, saying in French, "This is not a jersey," on the back of the jersey to nod to his famous "This is not a pipe" painting. And then we had Spain away, which is on its face a plain white kit, but a really gorgeous kind of brick red with that to augment that. Looked really sharp on the field. England home, it's England. They're white, but some patterning in there that made it a little bit more interesting, although not a big fan of the numbers that they had on there. Just, I did not like
it was a clash
font.
big time.
Yeah. And then Argentina away, the blue one with the swirls, which they insisted for historical purposes wearing against England, which again, not a look that we have seen from them necessarily, but certainly a look that was their own.
Here's why that one's a loser to me. Enzo Fernandez's sister, in a widely circulated clip following losing the final, saying, "Well, at least we have the Malvinas." I don't think that winning a World Cup semifinal means that you acquire a foreign territory. Last I checked, the last time they did a referendum, only 3 of the 18 Argentinians on those islands voted in favor of being governed by Argentina. Everybody else wanted to be governed by the UK. So yeah, historical meaning, meaningless. England home, it's a white t-shirt kit, better than it looked initially, to your point. Spain away, similar kind of thing. I feel like we got to go the Magritte. It spurred this whole conversation of people going, what other pop art inspired stuff could we do? I mean, they're printing all this stuff on plastic, and they can do that kind of thing. Why not just go crazy? Why not get a Keith Haring kit in there? I feel like the Magritte setting a potential new standard of options for beyond the standard things. I think that's a beautiful thing, a great thing that came from it.
Yeah, kind of came out of nowhere, and as we get to see that more and more, yeah, it was fantastic.
Transition.
Well, those are the only awards that matter. That's what we know for
the
sure.
Eppies.
Who cares about the Ballon d'Or, because the Eppies have happened. So Phil, where do we begin with Seattle other than I hope everyone enjoyed that giant plate of crow that I prepared for everybody. Fresh out of the kitchen.
Okay.
I felt really good about it. That's my initial knee-jerk take on it. Seattle had their own match prior to the match with Austin to get their beginning of the second half of the season going. And the way that things played out, we did indeed see history in that Brian Schmetzer has now lost a 4th consecutive game, which he had not done his entire 10-year tenure at the Sounders. Give us your reactions, your summary of what you saw on Wednesday, what you thought was interesting, what you thought still needs some work, biggest surprises, biggest takeaways, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we had a huge article go up on Thursday, of course, recapping Wednesday's match, getting quotes from Davey Arnaud, the interim head coach, of course, and then Brad Stuver, John Gallagher, and then, of course, Irvin Torres, the hero of the night, comes on as a sub, 14 sub minutes, 2 assists, looked really good in that 10 role. Didn't have really any kind of defensive impact on the game, but that didn't matter. He showed up in pockets where it mattered, got the assist to Azuni for the eventual game-winning goal, and then got the insurance goal assist to Christian Ramirez. We had an interesting Torres for Torres and Superman for Superman sub that was a part of, so that was a lot of fun. And tactically, what I take away from that, of course, is the inverted wingbacks that Arnaud deployed. He had John Gallagher on the left, and then he had Joseph Rosales on the right, which are not customary, but he had explanations for that in terms of them being able to cut inside on their stronger foot. So again, tactically, I don't know that this works every game. I don't know if this is just like a situational thing or something that he's wanting to deploy as a kind of regular go-to type thing. I worry a little bit about width and how the wingers are going to be deployed. And maybe tonight we'll see Jaden Nelson, which again, kind of questions about how he will fit in a Curtin system anyway, but also how is he going to fit in with whatever we are getting here with Arnaud, which seems to be like maybe a mashup of what we know from him before in the Wolf era, and then whatever he's trying to implement from Curtin, even though Curtin's not supposed to be officially engaged and involved with anything that is going on in the field prior to when he comes here after the 26th season concludes. So, but yeah, for Seattle, I mean, obviously continued bad vibes for them. I think they really needed this to keep from being in free fall. Austin will have to leapfrog 5 teams to get into a playoff place. They are still 14th in the West, but if you have teams like Seattle in free fall, then and you have other teams that are below the playoff line that might be struggling for whatever reason, then there's possibly an opportunity for Austin to get up there. I still need to see it. I'm still concerned that there's too much ground to make up, not necessarily in points, but in terms of leapfrogging teams. But definitely a good start to the second half of the season. I did not know what to expect results-wise coming into this. I didn't know what we were going to get in terms of Seattle and the continued injuries and how that was going to go, and thought they would play with a little bit more desperation. Obviously, the Heat was terrible. Made me feel like a bit of a jackass asking John Gallagher about the Heat from my place in a air-conditioned press box for 90 minutes and then just going down the elevator to the locker room. But we were working. We got momentarily sidetracked with Eric Goodman breaking out the Stuver bobblehead that he procured with the head that was detached. If you want to see the bobblehead, by the way, if you go to my Blue Sky account, Emmy did an unboxing for us. And so you can see it in its glory if you were not one of the lucky 10,000 to have procured one.
I feel like one of the bigger takeaways for me is there's only so much that we're going to see or learn about the entire second half of the 2026 season out of one game in terms of what's possible. They can only make up 3 points of ground in one match, and they did. And so now it's on to the next 3 points that they can make up when it comes to speculating on whether they can. Scoring the points is as much control as they have over their destiny at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
As they could hope for. So it's good that one game in, they're doing that. Mm-hmm. For me, expectations wise, I was quietly forecasting a win because I didn't want to go down to score lines based on a couple of the chances they had that didn't end up going anywhere. I thought, honestly, it could have been another 5-1 against Seattle. We saw a couple of things that Seattle got lucky in stopping, that had they not, it would have been 3-1 earlier than it was, a lot earlier than it was. I feel like that game-changing difference out of the Irvin Torres sub, I feel like even if Austin were a couple goals ahead by the time he came on, and I'm confident he still would have come on if Austin had headed toward the end minutes of the game ahead of things, I think we still would have seen some production as a result of him being on the field. One of the greatest bits of vindication, I think, in a long running, this kid is it, has been from early on, from the moment he moved up from the academy ranks to the second team, Landon and Jeremiah saying, this kid's the deal. This kid's going to do it. I'm glad to have seen that bear out. Something we didn't see, though he was in the building and not on the plane and across the border to Vancouver, was also, second teamer Jorge Lostaway, who was around, still without a first team contract, without which he can't play for the first team. But it feels to me like that kind of difference maker, whether the team is holding out, holding off, officially announcing a second team to first team supplemental deal that would make use of that remaining international slot, or who knows, maybe he is also being looked at out in the market. Maybe there's interest for him. Right. That wouldn't surprise me. He's solid. CJ Faudré, also not dressed for this match. Is he gonna go on loan, theoretically, to USL? Would it be the craziest thing to see him go on loan to New Mexico United alongside various former teammates who were over there, who he gets along with? I don't know. I feel like now that the transfer window is open, now that we are seeing Austin playing games and we can start reading tea leaves about who is on the roster in what position, who is hanging around at the first team and visibly not traveling with the second team anymore. And what does that mean? We may get some more ideas of things here as we go through this 3-game stretch in advance of the sudden jump into Leagues Cup. I think, jumping back to the match itself, the biggest non-surprise for me was that, to your point about the inverted wingbacks, trying things out, whether that is a recurring regular thing, whether it was a thing they were trying out that they may deploy in different matches depending on the opponent. It felt like a good version of trying stuff out.
Did you like it?
I think it ended up working in the interest of of being more vertical on the wings and letting guys who have the gas in the tank play expansively. And I think Schmetzer's system kind of accounts for stuff like that in theory. But Wednesday night was so much more about keeping everybody alive and fresh and expecting that the Heat was going to just melt Seattle. And sure enough, we saw multiple Seattle guys just losing it. Their guy with the armband getting a red card right toward the end of the game, which was the result of a second yellow, which instead of just having him suspended for Seattle's Saturday game as we record this, he will also be suspended on the other side of the All-Star game he is theoretically playing in.
Yes.
So
that is, of course, All-Star Jackson Reagan.
It felt to me like when we saw a triple sub, I love seeing a triple sub. Not a triple sub out of desperation, but a triple sub out of, okay, now time to spring the trap. And it felt like that it was not expected that was going to immediately completely change everything, but that it was, okay, time to get a wave of fresh legs out there. I think generally the tactics were stay alive in heat that is not what Austin plays in every time, but it's what Austin plays in often enough since Davey Arno's been here since the very beginning that they know how to survive. And that's rule number one. Survive and then wait for your opponent to fall down and run right over them.
I want to pull out the Stuver quote because I thought that this was indicative of what they were trying to do. And again, this kind of idea of just playing in the heat and waiting out Seattle. It took its toll on everybody. Obviously, Gallagher was talking about the impact of training in the heat, playing in the heat, just cumulatively over the couple of months that it gets hottest and worst in the summer. But Stuver says here, the biggest thing for me is just our ability to sustain pressure on Seattle the entire game. Whether it was going big over the top and making them face their own goal and running, you could see just how tired they were in the end and just how much the Heat took a toll. I mean, even a goal kick that I hit goes to Joseph in the first half. It's not like we get anything from it, but Paul Rothrock has to make a 70-yard run back to head the ball back, and that takes a toll over the course of the game. And so one of the things that we talk about is sticking to our principles for 90 minutes. Like, it's not going to happen in the first 10 minutes. What we're doing the entire game is building up. So at the end of the game, things start opening up and we start having things. So I think the guys did a tremendous job of just sticking to the script and doing things and executing really, really well. So I think that's interesting. Just that kind of notion that you're doing things early in the match, little subtle things that you might not necessarily pick up on first watch, but then as you see it unfold throughout the match, that it does end up to where late in the game, very late in the game, you have the opportunity to get those 2 go-ahead goals. Of course, that all hinges on Stuver making the save on Rusnak in the 80th minute. Again, he seemed more unbothered by it than I would have expected. Basically said that the defense allowed that to unfold where Rusnak was shooting it from far enough back, where Stuver was able to time things and guide things. To me, when I saw that play unfold, it's like, oh, Rusnak does not look very guarded in this moment, and this is a really scary shot. But Stuver seemed to be a lot more kind of calm and measured about it than maybe I would have been. It's not like some of the other moments that we've seen this season. I'm thinking about the RSL game in particular when the 2-on-1 happened, and that was a real kind of heart and throw moment.
I mean, that goal goes in and it didn't deflate everything. It wasn't like they were planning to let a goal in, but it very much came off like, yeah, whatever, it's a goal. We'll be fine. Just stick to the plan. Wait for the trap to be set, and then it will spring.
Yeah, I don't know. I think had that Rusnak shot have gone in and it would have been 2-1 Seattle, I don't know. You seem convinced that maybe Austin would have still overcome that. I don't know. We've seen that. That's been kind of the story of 2026, where those late goals let in lead to drop points, and it might be kind of more of the same. But you seem to think that there's maybe kind of a different attitude now that Arnaud's in charge, or is it what you're attributing it to? Or
there's a certain amount that it seems like these guys are. I wouldn't say that in talking to us last week, Ilie was hedging on if it's a win, but that they are focused on the win and focused on the fact that they have a lot to come from behind on. I don't know how productive it is to consider, well, what would have happened if a goal that wasn't scored against them had been scored against them? What if 3 goals?
Sure.
I don't know. We can what if that all day and all night, going too far down that rabbit hole. But looking at what if Seattle had gone up ahead, I don't know that I would be as worried right now as I was 8 weeks ago about that second goal going in, because the biggest thing that we saw Wednesday night to me was evidence of what Ilie said about everybody being on the same page with the same plan, things that John Gallagher mentioned to us after the match. Brad Stuver, Christian Ramirez, they seem much more unified around there being one plan. Without telling us this on the record, the continued emphasis on that feels like one of the big issues was that there was confusion as to what the actual game plan was and who it was coming from, whether it was the sporting director who had appointed himself effectively as coach for life, or the coach that he had set up to scapegoat and be the fall guy whenever and wherever and however it was useful. And to me, say what one will about Nico Estevez, and I'm not the biggest fan of all of his tactics, even though I think some people would characterize me as his biggest defender. I think he didn't get a fair shake because of the guy who hired him having an ulterior motive, in part for why he hired him, which was that Burrell was never going to go anywhere in Burrell's mind. However many buses the coaches he hired needed to get thrown under, ready to just toss him under the tires. And I think that it's difficult even for Nico's players to have given an honest take on what they thought of Nico's decisions, because even if it was, okay, guys, day before the match, here's what we're doing, it's completely different than what we did and prepped all week. Why, Nico? This is just what we got to do. Okay. Time is short, and you don't get into long monologues, and especially if you're about to put your players out on the field, you don't really have time for, well, this is what my boss is making us do, so do this thing that I'm not even happy about. And all you got time to do is be confused by why suddenly you're changing everything. And no offense to any of the players, you don't have to be a fully galaxy-brained individual to be a bit twisted around by spending your entire week setting up and working on a certain set of tactics and expecting to see a certain person in whatever position that you're feeding the ball to or whatever. And then all of it changes literally the day before a match. Not exactly the most serene, not exactly the most peaceful way to go about doing things.
Right.
I feel like we had much more of that kind of peaceful serenity of, yes, this is literally the thing we've been working on all week, and this is what we did, and this is why we did it. And I did not feel that we had that kind of clarity of thought really the whole rest of the season prior to this.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I mean, the most cheering thing about it is that I don't think they would have crumpled from a second goal that, to be clear, did not happen.
right. But could have.
Could have.
Just to be clear. It was an excellent save. It was one of the better saves of the year. I mean, definitely on Stuver's highlight reel. So, yeah, it was good. Should we move on to Houston?
Yeah, I was going to say, Phil, do we think that there's going to be a similar need to save like an Ezequiel Ponce goal from happening? Somebody who's scored no goals on DP money?
Well, talked to Dustin Richardson from Biocity Soccer. That is up this morning. Our foreign exchange looks like they're possibly trying to shop Ponce. So if you are in the market for a striker that did not succeed in MLS, like Sebastian Ferreira before him, then he is available. Because, of course, in part, Houston has kind of shown where they're going by getting Duncan McGuire from Orlando. So he's part of the team now. He got some minutes on Wednesday. Could potentially start in this one. Of course, Guilherme looking real good this year. Jack McGlynn, part of that team as well. Houston is currently in one of the lower playoff places. So we talked a little bit about just where they're at right now. And again, it's kind of where Austin was last year. This kind of idea that, okay, they're in the playoff places, but they've got aspirations to be top four. They want to win something, and fan expectations, I think, are kind of tempered based around that. And then, of course, we talked about McGuire and what that means for Ponce. And then we got into Copa Tejas. And of course, if you have looked at the Copa Tejas standings, Houston has played 2 matches and they've lost both of them. Dallas and Austin each have a win in there. Austin's currently ahead in the standings based on goal differential. But of course, a lot can hinge on this game, right? And again, we have seen Austin win in Houston before, but that 9-5-1 record that they currently have over Houston, most of that has been accumulated at Q2. So that is, again, it's a concern, right? So again, this is one of the tougher away matches that Austin traditionally faces year after year, just because of the rivalry, just because that Houston stadium is a hot box, and they're both teams get up for this generally. So, but looking forward to it. What are you looking for in this one?
For me, on the topic of Duncan McGuire, it'll be interesting to see how he makes the shift from the Orlando climate being his home climate, which is a different kind of humid than the swampy, muggy, it just hangs there in the air humid of Houston. I didn't live in Central Florida, but I was in Central Florida frequently enough when I was in college to know that it feels different than what Houston is like. And so I think people looking at it as a like-for-like climate shift for him, you don't have the intensity of the baking Texas summer heat on top of the humidity that doesn't just move. Because even though it's in the middle of the state, there is still that cross breeze, I guess you would say, that you get going through the middle of the state, which is why Disney built a theme park there, because the wind does actually move. The humidity comes out of the air in the form of rain, not just when it's time to flood a floodplain filling prone area, but just on a regular basis every day at 1 p.m. There could very well be something to that as an acclimation process that he's not necessarily ready for. Maybe that Houston thinks is not going to be that big of a deal. That might be a bigger deal than expected. That's kind of hemming and hawing, not really knowing for sure what adversity could hit this player new to the club. Great player. I have a great deal of respect for him. Hate to see a good signing for Houston. Hate it. But who knows how it's going to turn out. To me, just in terms of expectations for the match, to your point, historically, difficult place to play, terrible environment, terrible stadium, weird atmosphere for the fans of Houston that actually show up. I don't know that the fans love the tone for the second half of their season being set by the announcement of a prominent Dude Wipes sponsorship, which we roasted in the last episode. And it might seem silly to point to this, but when you're already having issues filling a stadium with ultras and the most energetic fans you could hope for, a weird first step forward for the second half of the season. That's another thing that I would say Houston should probably worry about more than I think they do looking at the giant bag of money.
It is H-Town night, which
there's
that. There are sillier promotions around the league. May I point you to Sporting Kansas City's Hogwarts Night, which is going to be happening August 1st.
Yeah, they sure made a choice about the franchise that is relaunching itself as a TV show on HBO Max that I won't be watching
in the year of our Lord 2026.
And also it's like, hey, Warner Brothers has this unsold Harry Potter merch that is the scarf version of a split jersey. Why pick one of the 4 houses when you can just pick all of them? Here's something that they couldn't sell at the theme park. Take it. I don't know.
2,000 hats, 500 each, I assume. Gryffindor, Ravensclaw, Slytherin, and
I don't know.
Hufflepuff.
It's that's
especially Hufflepuff.
It's beyond a poisoned well. What a choice. It's the Dude Wipes of media franchises. You want to just wipe it away and be done with it. Yeah, there are those weird intangibles, difficult to reasonably call which direction the wind's blowing on them. But the way that I see things coming out of the Seattle match, for Austin specifically, subjectively for that group of guys, whatever that team sheet looks like, whatever that formation looks like, whether it's what we found looked kind of like a 5-2-3 that also shifted into a 3-4-3 at different points, which I loved. It was,
you say that with such relish.
It was the formless formation. It was the Bruce Lee philosophical be like water flow of things that we wanted to see.
the first half of the season, and we saw it, and it was working, and it was a version of things that made sense to me, that it seemed like Nico wanted to play, and for some bizarre reason it wasn't actually happening. I look at the second half of the season in the only way that I think realistically, in a sane way, that the players could be, that their interim head coach could be, which is in the style of how Liga MX plays 2 seasons over the course of a year, a clausura and an apertura, ending with the apertura, which translates to opening, and beginning the year with the clausura, the closing. This 2026 apertura season, the table numbers are what they are, the stat numbers and everything, the accumulated stuff for 2026 are what they are. I think the only way that they can reasonably think about things is not focus on how deep the hole is to climb out of, because there's a lot of table results that are completely out of their control. But it's just on them to focus on, okay, let's look at this as starting from scratch. So game 1, 3 points, win, solid goal differential. That's got to be the way that they're looking at this match too. And it's why, on top of it being a Copa Tejas matchup, and so many of these players have been part of so many Copa Tejas matches that have not gone the way that they knew that they were capable of. It feels to me like these guys really want to deliver the win, not try to get those road points or that road point, but the only focus is the win. The only focus is the win, especially in a stadium that has given them trouble, especially in a case where their opponent dropping those 3 points against them positions them favorably for Copa Tejas, with a Frisco team that is still dealing with a stadium under construction and their own figuring stuff out. I feel like they're bringing all 3 points home on the bus. It feels like that's in the cards. I'm not saying it's easy. Same thing that I said about Seattle. Not saying that that was going to be easy, nor that it was easy, but I feel like this team is purpose-built and are not dealing with something the level of one of the best paid guys in the building in Ezequiel Ponce is not delivering for them. You can be critical of different parts of the performance of Austin's 3 DPs, but none of them are as much of a wash as Ponce is this season.
Right. Although I am now officially openly worried about Facundo Torres and his production.
Fair. And for me, looking at the Wednesday night results, I feel like there is less desperation to perform as we've seen at other points from not just the DPs, but other guys on the team who don't have a great night, and then it becomes a whole slide. I would love nothing more than to see tonight's match be Facundo's big night, the way that various guys got through on Wednesday. And he knows a little bit of something about a few of these players. I feel like getting reacclimated MLS and getting acclimated to this group of guys, having everybody on the same page, definitely a part of what I think made the first half of the season difficult for him popping through and showing the potential I still believe is there. I do not chalk Facundo up to being another one of Roto's many crimes. No, I think he's one of the most talented players in the league. And my hope is that we start to see that narrative turn in a positive direction.
Kind of the way it has with Azuni.
Exactly.
Right. I still don't know if Azuni is going to be dealt or not, but I'm beginning to see that he can maybe flourish in the second striker role.
It's the sort of thing that, you know, a lot of other pieces have to be functioning around it for it to work the way that it did on Wednesday night, the way that we've seen it work otherwise in 2026. And I think the more data that we have to work from analytically, I think things look a good deal more favorable for a lot of people. I'm not saying that Wednesday completely turned me around on Basard Sabovic, but like I told you, I was going to be serene and meditate, and I was ready for whatever team sheet came. And look, I got to be honest, that almost Olympico, that's the kind of thing that turns me around a bit on a guy, because I didn't see that as, just a lucky fluke. That was a lot of the potential that we saw early on from that guy, that it's almost like there was something in that guy's head that is no longer there. Interesting.
Yeah. Right.
And I feel like we see more of that effect from the rest of the squad. Everybody is incentivized to ball out. Everybody is incentivized to make themselves look good, whether they are going to be going somewhere else, whether they're going to be staying here. It benefits and behooves them all to do well. Going back to Curtin's introductory press conference, the philosophy that all of these guys know is coming in is you got to perform. You got to do your bit. And I feel like the more data that we have to work from, I feel confident that under Davey, who all these guys seem comfortable enough with, that we're going to see more of that kind of thing.
Yep. All right. Anything else we want to hit before we get on out of here?
Well, there's a bit of unfortunate news that carries a trigger warning with it that dropped, reported by The Guardian, that it would behoove us to at least mention, even though we are short on details, which considering the nature of it, I think is kind of understanding. So to briefly get into that, there's a piece of reporting from The Guardian, co-reported by Pablo Iglesias Maurer, that there's a still ongoing law enforcement investigation involving Austin police as well as the FBI into player-to-player sexual abuse within the Austin FC Academy. And we got an official statement from Austin's Academy. My take, I think the most obvious part of it is this is terrible news to drop any day, any time. The understanding is that this happened some months ago toward the end of last year. Forced a pause in the related age group of player activities. Players were suspended, players were expelled, players were disciplined. The only speculation that I have relative to what we do know is that for there to be parents of kids who were victims of the behavior that was perpetrated, for it to have happened at least 7 months ago and not have it break until now, my assumption is that according to what the club said about things being dealt with immediately upon being alerted by those parents, I assume it would have leaked much, much, much sooner if for some reason Austin FC were not being honest about that. I've got no reason to disbelieve at face value what's in the club's statement until I see something otherwise. At the same time that this involves underage kids means that we may not get anything else. Right. And there is that reflex to want to know more, to want more details, to want to know more of what went on and more assurance that everything is great and everything is fine, that things were reported. Everything is not fine. Something bad happened. And I think that it's the sort of thing that we'll find out what we find out and don't have to be happy about it. Don't have to be at the same time assuming that, sure, the club did everything that they could to prevent something like this from happening. We don't know, and it's not reasonable or fair to make any assumptions in either direction. One thing I can say, though, is that US Safe Sport is a joke, and to think that it does something to meaningfully prevent this kind of stuff from happening, anybody who has been involved in youth sports in the United States knows that it's there as a processing agency and not the kind of protective organization that it is reputed to be. My hope is that, as reported, everything got dealt with, the rapidity and responsibility that one could expect. But I don't know, Phil, what's your take on what we know about this so far?
I'm beginning to kind of learn a little bit more about Safe Sport. So I don't know that I necessarily want to pass judgment on that. But yeah, certainly it's being characterized as misconduct. We don't know what that is exactly because it involves kids and their parents, and because the club seems to be active in trying to manage this and to make things right. I'm loath to dig into it further. I mean, I imagine that more details will come out over time. I take the club at their word that they're being responsible and concerned about what's happening, and seems like they're cooperating with the investigation. Seems like it does not, as far as we know, involve anybody who is higher up. Of course, seems like both the academy director and then obviously the sporting director above him when this happened are no longer with the club. That's not related to that, but still that there's this possible way forward with the people who are in charge now that this is known, this is out, that this is something that they're apparently already dealing with. Like you said, it's never good to have this kind of thing come out. It's never good to have your name associated with sexual abuse allegations, regardless of how deep and how wide-ranging this goes. My hope is that good things come out of this and that there's learning that happens and processing that happens, and that it just becomes a safer, better environment as a result of having gone through the investigation and having additional information to what happened in order to hopefully be able to prevent that. There's really not much else to say other than that. Yeah, we did go up with something last night. I felt since the reporting was out there that it's good to at least let people know, hey, this is going on,
100%.
but didn't have anything from the inside to add necessarily. Just wanted to provide a little bit more kind of localized perspective to what The Guardian did. And then, of course, KXAN came out with stuff as well. If you go to Verde All Day, there's links to both those reports there. There's a little bit more context about Safe Sport. There's a little bit more about what the club did and the steps they took specifically, which is lifted directly from the club statement, which was timed to come shortly after that Guardian story came out. So clearly they were aware that that was going to happen, that that was going to drop, and prepared response accordingly and shared what they could. This involves minors, so it's a little bit different than, for example, again, we had the Cecilio Dominguez situation happen. The dynamics of that are a lot different when it involves adults versus when it involves kids.
The one additional thing I'd put in is what I said about US Safe Sport, something that I have no compunctions whatsoever about saying. I would say again every day. The framework that is supposed to be there protecting everybody in youth sports, regardless of the level at which they are at, does not do it itself as a watchdog. And what I am thankful for, at least at face value, is that it seems like despite that protection layer not seeming like it necessarily did its job as it was supposed to function as it has for decades, I think that it's important to note that at face value, what Austin FC was able to do is something that if they had not acted as they said themselves on the record in public in a way that could get them in their own trouble, if for some reason they were lying about it. I mean, that was one of the things that I saw immediately was people saying, why trust anything that the club says at face value? The club's saying what they said, even though it doesn't seem like much on the surface, on the record, would directly open them up to being subpoenaed, having records that were very easily to verify, looked at. It would basically be the equivalent of, please sue us, because if we lied about this, you're literally already investigating everything that would involve looking at the kind of records and talking to the kinds of people who could validate that we're making this up. They would not say that stuff to set themselves up to be massively, massively sued unless to the best of their understanding, that's exactly what happened. As part of what they said to The Guardian, they said that the dismissals in terms of staff also were not related. So until, if and when I hear something different, I take that at face value as well. You know, whatever I might feel about Rodolfo Borrell, the theoretically also no longer head of the academy, Iago, I would like to believe that at face value, the club is not doing CYA here, because this is not the kind of thing that would indeed cover them on this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. We'll monitor. We'll continue to see where this goes, obviously. And then we're continuing on with the season. So enjoy the match tonight. And of course, as we typically do in Verde All Day, we'll do the At the Whistle, where you'll get the match report right after everything ends in Houston. And then on Sunday, you'll get the quotes from Davy Arnaud and the player we get, since it is an away match. You're not making the trip out, right?
No, I'm not. I was based on how Wednesday went, I almost changed my mind. Almost. Right. But it's a rough one. Like, all the best to everybody who, as they're listening to this, might very well be on the bus, whether the sleeper bus or the party bus. And sometimes the sleeper bus is also a party bus that people have to find a way to sleep on as well. If you're looking for a ticket, if you're thinking, oh man, if I could get on one of those buses last minute, if you're in Los Verdes, take a look in the Slack. Last I checked, there was actually somebody still had a bus included ticket that they put up for sale at the last second. If you're staying in town and looking for somewhere to go, Hop Squad's going to be the place to be. Los Verdes is going to be set up doing a Hop Squad watch party, selling merch, drink specials, good vibes despite the heat.
Yucatan tacos too.
Yucatan tacos. Get them early before they run out of anything.
Aside from that watch party, another thing that I wanted to plug is that you'll see on the Los Verdes socials and a variety of other people's socials, myself included, Danny Pereira's mom, the executive director of the A Dos Toques Foundation. They are running a silent auction throughout the weekend with items, memorabilia that's going to be set up at a local card shop up off of 183. So take a look at the Los Verdes socials for the info on how you can go and bid on that stuff. One of the items I should mention is a signed season 1 jersey in a frame that's got a bunch of signatures on it from a bunch of players that, were here year 1. Few of which are still around, but if you're a long time relative to Austin's existence fan, the one and only Mr. Labradog, Peter Dolan, a former member of Los Verdes' starting 11 board, generously donated that from his personal collection. All proceeds of the silent auction are benefiting people in serious need in Venezuela. So yeah, take a look at the info. Stokas is probably going to continue doing more things like this in the weeks and months to come, but there's some cool stuff to be gotten. So definitely look into that. And if you can afford to, contribute some dollars.
Sounds good. All right. Maybe there's a Matt Beasler signature on that.
I think there is.
Jersey.
I think there is.
This is the best Austin FC related thing you've heard in the history of 9 years I've been on this planet.